Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let's go to TYT today. TYT is doing a story on Trump voters angry that Trump essentially allowed internet service providers to sell their information without their consent. They should be angry. You got to understand, I get Trump supporters are supposed to be, Trump made this statement that he could shoot somebody in the middle of the street and, his supporters will still support him. This is different. This is different. I think this is hitting on somewhat of a pet peeve of people in general, even his supporters. I've known a guy. I used to work with a guy, and he used to put a sticky on top of his camera because he was afraid that somebody was going to essentially spy on him. Nobody likes this feeling of a monolithic organization essentially stealing data, looking at your information, selling your information against your own consent. That is the opposite of liberty. That is the opposite of freedom. Or at the very least, free from intrusion by a corporation. I don't necessarily see the difference between a corporation intruding and a government intruding, personally. Just saying. Anyway, the story, for the most part, is perfectly fine. It goes off the rails. I would just make the point it goes off the rails. Let's discuss it. Let's go through the story. We can discuss after.
Republicans in Congress have repealed a law that would prevent internet service providers from selling personal information about you and your browsing history. Now, Trump did decide to sign this into law, and interestingly enough, a lot of the people who ended up voting for Donald Trump are not in favor of this and really wanted him to veto it. So let's get to some of the numbers. Now, Huffington Post and YouGov did a survey, and what they found was that this is really a bipartisan issue. Both Democrats and Republicans hate the idea of their privacy being violated by internet service providers looking to make a buck off this data. So according to the Huffington Post, the vast majority of Americans, including Trump supporters, don't think internet service providers should be allowed to share customers' sensitive data without their permission at all. Prior to the president signing the bill into law, nearly 3/4 of Republicans and Democrats said they wanted him to veto it. Just 6% of Americans think ISPs should be allowed to share such sensitive data without permission, and 83% oppose the concept.
So let's pause there for a second. First off,
so let's give a little bit more context to what they're talking about. This is NBC News. Trump signs measure to let ISPs sell your data without consent. President Trump signed legislation Monday killing privacy rules that would have required internet service providers to get your explicit consent before they share or sell your web browsing history and other sensitive information. The rules were approved in the final months of Barack Obama's administration, but hadn't taken effect yet. Under the bill Trump signed Monday, they never will, and the FCC isn't allowed to try to pass new rules. It's gross. The rules passed last year by what was then a Democratic majority on the FCC would have required ISPs to ask you explicitly to opt in to letting them share personal information. On web-based ad networks, data sharing is usually turned on by default, and you have to dig through the menus and settings to opt out. ISPs argue that the Obama-era regulations would have put them at a disadvantage, and the White House agreed. What exactly is the disadvantage? And you asking whether or not you can steal my private data. What's the disadvantage? It sounds like you were just coming up with an argument so you could steal people's information. That's what it sounds like. And it sounds like you had a willing compatriot in that White House that would allow it. Broadband providers, meanwhile, said consumers had no reason to worry. Oh, I'm glad you said that, because now I am perfectly worry-free about you stealing my information and selling it to the highest bidder. We do not sell our broadband customers individual web browsing history. Comcast said in a statement last week, we did not do it before the FCC rules were adopted, and we have no plans to do so. Individual web browsing history. That's pretty specific. That's pretty specific. I mean, they could have said, we don't sell web browsing history, right? If you're adding in individual, you're being very specific to what you're saying. That's a political statement. They're selling your data. NBC News is a division of NBC Universal, which is owned by Comcast Corp., the nation's largest cable provider. Similarly, Verizon said in a statement, Verizon does not sell the personal web browsing history of our customers. We don't do it, and that's the bottom line. Now that you said it, I feel perfectly comfortable now. I feel totally comfortable. I was concerned that being a capitalistic enterprise, if you were going to do things to maximize your profit, even if that meant stealing my data to do it. But now that you said that that's not what you're doing, I feel totally okay with it. All right, let's go back to them. I kind of want them to get into the conversation itself, because once they get into the conversation, I think some of the positions that they take can be unproductive. That's all I'm saying. And I'll explain what I mean as you watch.
Who in their right mind would be in favor of this? So basically, what the Obama administration had done and said, look, if you run these internet service providers and they're giving you Verizon, Comcast, whoever it happens to be, you oftentimes in most parts of the country don't have a choice. You only have one provider in a lot of places. So they're bringing the internet into your house, but since they're bringing it in, they would like to take all of your private information, including your browsing history, and sell it to other people, including social security information, and also one other thing. Well, all the places that you visited online, and that can get awfully sensitive, especially when you talk about financial matters, health matters, etc. Right? So, which American in their right mind is going to go, oh yeah, go ahead and sell my most private information? The Obama administration had said they're not allowed to do that. Trump comes in and goes, I don't care about you, I care about my donors. These guys are my donors, so I'm going to let them make an extra buck off of your most sensitive data. Now, nonetheless, I'm still surprised that the numbers are as stark as they are, because usually there are 25% of Americans that you can't get them to move. You'll say, okay, look, they're going to rob you blind. You're like, okay, good, I won't be robbed blind as long as the dear leader tells me to, right? But even that knucklehead 25% got moved on this issue. They're like, wait, why would I want you to sell my social security information or my private information and my browsing history? I don't want that. One of my favorite parts is apparently some of the subreddits who are supporting Donald Trump, when this came up, they're like, no, he's not really going to take our private information and sell it, is he? Here's my answer to you. Told you. We told you he would do it. What, you thought he wouldn't do it because you're a special snowflake who can't be touched? He doesn't give a damn about you. He doesn't care if you voted for him or you supported him or you were a troll for him. He's thinking, how am I going to make a buck off of you? That's what I told you from day one. Again,
I think the takeaway from these types of stories is not, you're Republican, so you're wrong. I mean, I do think that way, but
I was going to say, well, that doesn't sound too bad.
No, but I think the underlying issue is just the willful ignorance of the electorate, right? I'm not calling you stupid. I'm calling you ignorant because you don't care about the policies.
Yeah, that's distasteful to me. I mean, it really is. It comes across as being just elitist. It really does. Yeah, I don't particularly like it. It's like, oh, thank you for not calling me stupid. I'll accept ignorant. That's so much better than being stupid. That's great. The problem with that is, there's a few problems with it. For one, it's kind of a shallow interpretation. It's a shallow analysis of the whole thing. The more interesting question is, well, why? Why would somebody do that? Why would somebody vote for Trump, a billionaire, and believe that billionaire that has no track record of helping anybody but himself? Why do these people think that he's going to stand up for them? That's the first question. The second point, you voted for Hillary Clinton. You voted for Hillary Rodham Clinton. Now, I know you were a Bernie supporter. Fair enough. I've watched the show where you were having this internal pang of sorts, where you were like, oh man, I don't want to vote for Hillary, but Donald Trump is crazy. I even witnessed the turn where it became this thing of, I'm repulsed by Hillary Clinton to, all right, now I need to make myself feel like I like Hillary Clinton. I watched it. I saw it in real time. Show after show after show. I am a TYT viewer for the most part. I used to watch more than I do now just because I do my own channel, but I distinctly remember that. You're able to make this opinion. You're able to call people ignorant. Purely, literally, purely, just by virtue that Trump won. if your candidate, Hillary Clinton, who you and Cenk voted for, if she would have won, if she would have privatized your Social Security, would I have been able to be on my show, since I didn't vote for either one of them two, and say, Ana, she didn't know any better. She's not stupid. She's just ignorant. I mean, yeah, she voted for Hillary Clinton. She didn't know that Hillary Clinton was putting people in her team that was going to privatize her Social Security. What about putting a missile defense shield in Syria? If she would have shot down a Russian jet, can I come on my show? Oh, she's not stupid. She's just ignorant. She didn't know that Hillary Clinton was going to potentially shoot down a Russian jet with her policies. Hillary said that's what she wanted to do. If Ana was okay with that, or if Ana wasn't okay with that, she shouldn't have voted for Hillary Clinton. Now, I'm pretty sure Ana would say, well, wait a minute. I didn't have anybody else to vote for. All right. Why isn't that excuse just as good for Trump supporters? That's what I'm fundamentally missing. Like, I understand you want to sit on your high horse, and you want to sit on your YouTube channel, and you want to look down on people, and you want to call them ignorant and stupid. I get it. I imagine that makes you feel better about yourself. But the reality of the situation is, you voted for Hillary Clinton. You are a Bernie supporter. Both of you, unabashed. And when the time came, you turned around and said, okay, I'm with her. You were terrified. You didn't stand on any particular principle. You just was scared. Keep it real. Keep it real. You were terrified of what Trump was going to do in that office. You should have been terrified what Hillary was going to do in that office. She was talking about having a goddamn nuclear war, or potentially a nuclear war. So I understand where you're coming from when you're attacking these guys. Yes, I get it. They were delusional. They were delusional. They were kind in a way. But you willfully voted for Hillary Clinton. Let's just put that in perspective. That's the point I'm getting at is, your guy, your candidate, the person who you wanted to win, Bernie Sanders, the person who you... I watched the TYT shows when Sanders was giving the debates and all. Rebel headquarters. Literally, rebel headquarters. That's the way I felt, anyway, when I watched it. They hoisted his body around the DNC. And not just hoisted his body around the DNC. They essentially shut up progressives in many respects. They made Sanders vote for the person who cheated him. And then to compound that by turning around and voting for the party that did that to the guy who you were voting for. It just seems a bit much. I'm not going to call you stupid. I'm just going to say you're ignorant for doing such a thing. Whether you realize it or not. Anytime that you vote for a candidate, not because you want that candidate, but because you're scared of the other guy, you give the person a blank pass. Meaning, based upon what you were going to do, Hillary Clinton would have gotten that office. No ties. If she would have privatized your Social Security, what were you going to do? The next maniac was going to be up in 4 years. Are you telling me that you didn't have the balls to vote for somebody other than Hillary Clinton in this particular election? But the next time a maniac comes up, after she privatizes your Social Security, after she puts some kind of missile defense shield in Syria, after she gives over financial authority to Wall Street, are you telling me you were not going to vote for her again in 4 years? The point I'm making to you, Ana, is if you're making this case that says, well, I had to vote for Hillary Clinton because Donald Trump was just the goddamn apocalypse. Fair enough. I'm just making the point to you that that logic means that any time that situation arises, which has been the situation for the last 4, 8, 12, 16 years, you would end up voting for the Democrat because you were terrified of the Republican. Where does that stop? Now, if you're going to make this argument, I had nobody else to vote for. Fine. They didn't have anybody else to vote for either. That goes both ways, whether you realize it or not. And I know you think Hillary was a better choice than Trump. I don't know that. I don't know that at all. Even with all this bad stuff that's going on with Trump, certainly that's less bad than a nuclear war. Like, I guess, put it this way, I don't think it's as clear cut as you're making it. I don't think it was one of these things where these people went through one policy consideration after another. They looked at it and says, I can't vote for that woman. This guy is not the same as everybody else. I want something different. I want something different. I need something different. Status quo has been lying to me. They've been screwing me over. I need something different. I am making a distinction between people who are just hateful. Put them to the side. I'm talking about everybody else. I'm talking about the people who voted for Obama for 2 years, or for 2 terms. I'm talking about the people who were kind of right, independent-ish. The people who you could get. The people who the Democratic Party could have made a case to. You could have got those people. Not you. I'm talking about the party itself. But the party went a particular path. I'm making a point to you that in the same way that you felt you didn't have anybody else to vote for, they didn't feel like they had anybody else to vote for. And if you're going to make this case that these people are wrong because of each and every policy decision that Trump is going to make, aren't you held to the same standard for each and every policy decision that Hillary Clinton would have made? I'm just talking about fairness or context, not even fairness, just context. I just don't think calling people ignorant gets you anywhere, particularly when you're looking at the situation and saying there was no good choices in this particular election. I've met people who said, I voted for Trump because I couldn't stand Hillary, but I don't like the things that he's doing. Are those people also ignorant, or were those people put into the same corner that you were put into? Which is it?
That is an ongoing issue that we have with our elections. I'm going to keep repeating it. I don't care about the polls. I don't care about the horse race. I don't care about what some pollster says and whether or not his methodology was right or wrong. What I care about is, are these politicians going to look out for us? And a lot of people voted for Trump based on emotion, based on the fear-mongering that they totally, bought into.
Didn't you vote for Hillary Clinton for the exact same reason? Didn't you vote for Hillary Clinton for the exact same reason? You weren't originally with her. You were with Bernie. You're making this case that these people were terrified of, quote unquote, the other. Some were. Do you honestly believe that was the most or the majority? I don't think that was the majority, personally. I think people voted for Trump for all sorts of reasons. I think the majority of the reason that people voted for Trump was, this guy is different. These other people have been screwing us over. If they had Sanders on the ballot, those people probably would have voted for Sanders. The point I'm making to you is, it had nothing to do with race. It had more to do with economics. That's the point I'm making to you. And if you're going to say they were scared of the other, you were terrified of Trump. There was fear on both sides. I just don't like the perspective. I got to be honest. I understand where she's coming from. I don't like these policies either. These policies are absolutely gross. But at the very least, I look at this election with a particular context. It's like, I voted for Jill Stein. For the longest time in that election, I honestly didn't know what I was going to vote for or what I was going to do. I could not get over the hurdle of, she fucked over Sanders. I can't, it's like I have to have a certain amount of dignity within myself to not make that situation worse by giving her my vote after she does something like that. There's a certain level, it's not even just integrity, it's a fairness. I mean, just basic fairness. There's a moral hazard in having a situation where a party cheats the member of that party, defrauds the democratic process, and then you reward that particular candidate with your vote. That's problematic at best. Even if that means getting a Donald Trump, that's problematic. I'm sorry, I think that's worse.
Afraid of the others. Okay, well, is this guy really going to look out for the little guy, or is he going to look out for big business? I mean, he's a businessman who, again, has profited and exploited a corrupt political system for financial gain. What makes you think he's going to look out for you as opposed to big business?
You voted for Hillary Clinton. You voted for Hillary Clinton. I don't understand how you're making this argument. You voted for Hillary Clinton. The woman in the pedestal leaves. The woman who was monetizing the State Department. Now, I get it. Donald Trump was a crook. Fair enough. That's true. But before the election was over with, the two bits of information that we had was, one person was a crook in the private sector. The other person was taking money from the private sector and giving state favors through government. Which is worse. Which is worse. I get where you're coming from. I'm making a point to you. You're saying that these people voted for Trump. Fair enough, they voted for Trump. You're calling them ignorant. I don't necessarily think all of them were ignorant. I think some of them were delusional. I think some were tricked. whatever, however you want to describe it. You're saying they voted out of fear. Fair enough. All of those things apply to you also. Again, you voted for Hillary Clinton. You voted out of fear. The person you voted for was a known crook. The information was clear as day that she was a crook. The policies that she would have been implemented, you would have been responsible for in the same way that they're responsible for the policies Trump is putting out. You're making this case purely happenstance. It's just by virtue that Trump won that you can make this case right now. If Trump had lost, somebody else would be making this case about you. Put it in perspective. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. It's not that I think everything she's saying is wrong on this. It's just a shallow explanation. That's all. There's no depth to it. It's turning people into like two-dimensional drawings. I don't think that's it. Yes, there are some people out there who are just ruggedly hateful. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the people who you can communicate with, who you can reach, who you can touch, who you can bring over to your side. If they full well believe that the things that you were saying were legitimate and earnest, calling them ignorant, it's not going to get you there.
So I want to get into the other numbers because they're so stark. I almost haven't seen anything this stark in there. The objection crosses party lines, as they explain here, with more than 80% of Democrats, Republicans, and independents all saying ISPs shouldn't be allowed to share customers' browsing history and other personal information without permission. This is my favorite. 74% of the public, including 3/4 of Republicans, said that Trump should veto the bill, with just 11% advocating for him to sign it. But they explained in that instance, so you got over 80% overall, right, including Republicans. But then they told the Republicans, this is a GOP-sponsored bill. And they were like, no, we still hate it. Still 3/4 of Republicans said, I don't care that it's GOP-sponsored. I hate it. I don't want you to sell my browsing history. So look, man, as they explain in this particular Huffington Post article, it's true. I know when I covered it. Obviously, the healthcare bill that they recently proposed was disastrously unpopular, unpopular by 20 to 30 points, depending on the poll that you looked at. 52% of Americans were against it. That was 52%. It was terrible. This is over 80% of Americans against it. They hate this bill. And by the way, look, we in some ways, I say the ha-ha and I make fun of you if you're a Republican who voted for Trump who feels disappointed now because you were wrong. But at this,
tell me, Uger, were you right for voting for Hillary Clinton? Is that the argument you're making? Implicit in your argument is that you were correct. They were wrong. Were you correct in being with her? Is that your argument? Is that the case that you're making? All right. Give me that case. So what did you tangibly think was going to take place that's going to be drastically different between Hillary and Trump? I would agree with you a few things. I would agree with you that in specific issues, Hillary Clinton wasn't going to destroy the EPA. But I've made this point before. Yes, she's not going to destroy the EPA, but is she going to do anything about climate change? No, she's not. You hit the wall at 60 or you hit it at 90, you're just as dead. The point I'm getting at is, these two candidates would have been different in some ways. For instance, Hillary Clinton probably wouldn't have passed an ISP service provider. Would Hillary Clinton have privatized your Social Security like her husband wanted to do? Maybe. Would Hillary Clinton have put troops in Syria? Yes. Would she have potentially shot down a Russian jet? Yes. With all this fervor that the Democrats are doing and this red baiting, this Russia stuff, do you think there would have been an investigation into Russia that would have been honest after Hillary Clinton took office? You have Democratic candidates right now saying, is an attack by the Soviet or by Russia constitute an act of war? Democrats. And you're telling me that if Hillary Clinton would have taken that office, she was a better option with these guys out here red baiting like that and fomenting what looks like a Cold War to me. I am not that strong on this idea that Hillary Clinton was a better candidate. I'm sorry, I'm not. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it.
At the same time, we're looking out for you, brother. We don't want your browsing history sold. And that's why we try to warn you in the first place. And forget the ha-ha for a second, okay? let's all fight together, okay? We're all against this. It doesn't matter if you're right wing or left wing in this particular case. Let's try to fight. Now, I know Trump's gonna say veto it. Like the guys on, I can't help it. But those the subreddit guys who are in favor of Donald Trump and then the trolls, and they're like, oh no, but our daddy will veto it, won't he? No, daddy will not veto it. Okay, daddy loves it. Daddy's gonna get paid off of that. So sad day for you, you're just another sucker. But again, I know I can't help myself, but we gotta unite here. If you hate the bill, I hate the bill, let's work.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. You can't have a whole show where the tenor of the show is, you guys made a stupid mistake. You guys were being ignorant. Now, join up and let's fight together. That doesn't work. Who functions on that premise? I'm going to shit on you the entire show, and then at the very end of the show, I'm going to have a conciliatory, hey, let's get together. I know I said bad things about you. I know I called you stupid, and I know I called you ignorant. But let's fight together now. You need to make a determination on what your objectives are. Honestly. If your objectives are to create a situation where you're getting people from a broad spectrum to back you, then you need to understand why those people voted for Trump. It can't be this two-dimensional model that you guys are creating in your head. People have complex reasons for making decisions. And again, I'm making this distinction of saying, all right, put the hateful people to the side. I don't care about them. I'm talking about the majority of the people, for the most part, who are reachable. Look, maybe I'm biased, not necessarily biased, but maybe I'm overly optimistic on this front. I just don't think the overwhelming majority of the people voted for him purely out of this kind of racist, misogynist, backwards thing. I don't necessarily believe that. And I certainly don't believe that Hillary Clinton, the person that you guys voted for, the person who stuck a shiv in your particular candidate that you wanted, that you damn near cried for on TV, I don't think voting for her was a better option either. You need to make an argument to me on why Hillary Clinton is a better option. Right now, I don't see that argument. Or at the very least, I think it's heavily debatable. Even with everything that took place right now with Trump, I agree with you that there were going to be certain things that take place with Hillary Clinton that would have been better. But there would have been things that would have been just as gross. And I still say, if you're holding these people up to the standard of, why'd you vote for this guy? Look at all these policies. Are you telling me that when Hillary Clinton, if she would have won that seat, there wouldn't have been policies that you yourself would have been ghastly over? You were like, oh God, that's gross. Based on the argument that you're making, those people are held to that sin. Those people are held to everything that Donald Trump does. Wouldn't you be held also to everything that Hillary Clinton does? I don't know, man. I think it needs more context. I think it needs to be less shallow. And I think you need to have a better image of the people who you're castigating. Particularly if you want those people to sign up and join up and actually fight for something other than just against each other. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, feel free to like, share. You can support on Patreon. Thanks guys.